Hello, how are you? Karibuni sana kwenye our session. Thank you. Now you can hear me. Karibuni sana kwenye session yetu ya how best you can leverage digital tools for social change. I'm just interested to understand our language comfortability, whether we should proceed with English or whether there's a preference to just use Kiswahili. I'm just looking at the attendees list, and I think most of us are Tanzanians. So I would think it's best if I use Kiswahili. And in case there's anyone in the attendees list who does not understand Kiswahili, please let me know, and we can always switch to English. Great, so I'll introduce myself. I'm Faraja Kota Nyalandu. I'm the founder and executive director of Shula Direct. And recently we started a social impact incubator for young women entrepreneurs focused on personal development and business development here in Tanzania. It's called Ndoto Hub, and we have a very cool slogan that says Anza na Ndoto, firmly believing in the potential of starting with a dream, starting with an idea, and how best you can be supported to bring your idea to life. So today I'll be focused more around digital principles, something which I think has really helped us at SureDirect to be able to build a social enterprise that is using technology on web and mobile platforms to be able to achieve our impact, but also revenue objectives. And I'm really interested to, as I'm presenting and as I'm sharing the principles, I am very interested to hear from each one of you if you find the lessons applicable, on particular so that we can just kind of get some practical examples of how being a here in Tanzania, but perhaps in your different markets, if applicable. Great. So just a bit of background. At SureDirect, our main objective is to improve access to young learners for primary and secondary, in primary and secondary schools, and by digitizing secondary and primary school curriculums, enabling them to access qualified content, but also through that access to support them to improve their learning outcomes. So of course, when you're looking at a school environment or a school context, you have to really factor in what they're currently learning in school, but you also have to factor in teachers. Great. Okay, so here we go. I think I kind of lost you guys a bit. So here we go. So I'll just take you through quickly like an overview of all the principles. But before I do that, I'll just look at the background of why we have the principles today. So as you all know, as what you've seen, there's so many solutions, so many platforms that are using technology, but most importantly, they are using technology for social change. So they're using technology for social impact, social development, community improvement, and all sorts of aspects of social or perhaps even environmental or socioeconomic growth in our society. And what was really becoming so interesting was finding all these solutions not having a standard of practice. So you'll find each of the solution having its own approach, having its own modalities, having its own methodologies, having its own objectives, but not necessarily coming from the same foundation of principles or the same foundation of standards that can be cutting across all these platforms. So what was really being considered in the very beginning as these principles are being developed was what would work best if we want to have a great digital solution. What should be the factors to consider as you are developing your digital solution? And over time, of course, they've really been tested. They are proven to actually be the right solid foundation to build the right contextual and equitable solutions for social impact. So my favorite one, of course, and it's also the first one, is designing with the user. And it's quite interesting because it should be like almost like a no-brainer when you're looking at designing or developing a solution. In most cases, even if it's for social impact or even when it's for business, in most cases, your user, whether it's your client, your customer, in some cases they call them beneficiaries, they will have all the answers because ideally, we are supposed to be addressing the pain points or the challenges of that particular user or the client or the beneficiary. And so in understanding their pain point, it's not just enough to speak to a user and to go back to your prototype or to go back to your solution and work on it. What really, really matters is to actively engage them in developing the solution. So as you are at every stage of a solution, so let's say it's a web platform and you want to design a web platform for students, like in our case, it's so important, first of all, to understand their needs, to understand not just their gaps, but also their opportunities, to understand the whole, let's say the whole daily life or the whole system of that user's life. So what do they do? What do they like? Who influences their decisions? Who is, like, how does their day run? How do they use their time? What don't they like, and what is available in their lives? What do they currently use? So all those questions really make you understand what the user is like, their life, how they live their life, their lifestyle, or how they actually operate within the community. But also it makes you understand if you are coming in with a solution, what will work for that user. So it could be at a place where perhaps they do not have internet connectivity. So in that situation, then perhaps going with a web platform that has to use internet might not necessarily be the right solution, but perhaps this user listens to the radio every day. Like when they wake up, they will switch the radio on and they will listen to the radio. So in that case, then it's best if you come up with a solution that is on a radio. So having like an audio program that can be supported with a radio transmission so that the user can actually use your solution. So it is so important to not just understand the user, but also to build your solution with them, and not just with them in mind, but actively with them. And then of course, my other favorite one, which I also really, really like, is understanding the existing ecosystem. So this is one of my favorite ones because I don't believe in duplicating efforts. I really believe we are supposed to be building on top of each other. So whoever has done something amazing in the past, we are supposed to come in with our new solutions and build up on top of their strong foundations and on top of their good practices. So good practices can actually range. It could be great existing research. It could be a great model of achieving something. It could be an existing technology that can support you to build up on top of it. It could be an existing content. So in our case, actually, because we work with schools, one of the key things, for instance, in our ecosystem is existing curriculums, because we digitize primary and secondary school curriculums. So we are actually leveraging existing curriculums from the Ministry of Education to digitize them. So we're just adding a layer of technology. we're adding a layer of user experience, we're adding a layer of different users, but we are actually using the same curriculum that is existing within our ecosystem for primary and secondary schools. So it could be, again, it varies from industry to industry, but what is so important is to understand what is existing. So you really have to kind of like map out the existing structures, the existing policies, the existing solutions, the existing models, existing content, existing technology, but also existing human resources and existing personnel. And this could be in the form of other organizations, companies, or just perhaps interested members of the community who can give you feedback. There could be parents, there could be community groups. So really just mapping out the entire ecosystem. And then of course, as you're doing that, we love using technology because we believe we're building for scale. And the beauty of technology is that at a place where you would have reached 10 or 20 people, technology enables it to reach 1 million people. So in our case, again, with Shula Direct, with our web platform, at a place where a teacher would have perhaps taught a classroom of 60 students, in our case, a teacher can create content and teach a class of over 500,000 students or 1 million students. So it really is important from the word go to start defining scale. What does scale mean for you? And I would like to also highlight two very important aspects of scale. So there is scale in terms of width, like you have a huge number, like what you intend to achieve is, let's say, access. You want to reach 10 million people. And that is really pushing you to like design from the beginning on how best you can reach 10 million people. So considering perhaps existing infrastructure, connectivity, and all those issues. But at the same time, there are people who will actually be considering the breadth, the depth of their scale, in the sense that when you're considering perhaps a user, you wouldn't want to just give that user access. You would actually want to see a user having access to your digital platform, but also that user being able to have results in their life out of that digital platform. So again, in education, it could be improving their test scores, improving their interest in learning. It could be maybe improving their teacher-student relationship. Maybe it could be improving their creativity. It could be improving the extracurricular knowledge that translates to youth or children's development. And so it's so important from the beginning to actually consider, how do you define your scale? I'm just gonna look at the chat room if we have some questions, and wait. And if there's any, okay, we don't have any questions, so I will proceed. Yeah, and again, as you're designing for scale, in the same way that you have to define your scale for your digital platform, you also have to consider sustainability. So sustainability, again, it varies. It could be that you are interested in perhaps enabling your solution to be adopted by the government. In that way, then what you're building now ultimately will still be existing in 50 years, in 20 years, in 30 years. It could also be you want your users to pay for your services. So you integrate a business model, a revenue generating model in your digital platform, so that even if, let's say, you receive funding or you receive investment capital, you are able to actually build your solution and sustainably exist, because you have the resources. And resources is usually, it could be a number of things, but capital is also significantly important. So to just be able to foresee into the future, what exactly do you need to be able to make sure that you're actually not just having a great service or a great product today and you don't exist in 10 years or in 20 years. So I think it's so important to really, from the word go, think how you would like, if you have to, let's say, exit your organization, like what would success look like for you? Will it be ensuring that the project or the product or the service is still existing and it is being paid for by your customers? Or is it government adoption? Or is it rolling it as part of another existing ecosystem infrastructure? So you really have to define that. And then of course you have to be data driven. Data is so important. Like data is the oil, is the gold of the 21st century, it's the gold of the fourth industrial revolution. Data enables you to make decisions that, that support not necessarily just your growth, but it's actually cheaper to use data than not to use data. It is so expensive to develop digital platforms. And in my case, I think any solution that is targeting the community or that is aiming at community engagement without using data, because what you find is that you might start something, you might develop a whole platform, and ultimately to find that it's not something that was necessary in the community, or perhaps you are receiving data, but you are not considering data. And the good thing with, again, using digital platforms is that automatically you are collecting data. So collecting data is one thing, but whether you use that data is a completely different thing. And it's so important to not just collect data, but to make use of that data to influence your activities, to influence your strategy, to also influence your next steps in terms of maybe stakeholder engagement, or perhaps how best you can design with your user. So you find that the other principles kind of really relate with data. And if you are keen on your data, of course, you'll have ecosystem data, you'll have how best to scale your solution, you'll be able to be collecting data from your user, you'll also be looking at how best you can build, because you have data of how you are putting out your solution now, but then how best you can use that data to be a foundation for your future growth and sustainability. And then, of course, the complicated ones, of course, in this digital principles, complicated in the sense of what many people tend to not really consider. And again, it depends with your solution, but it's things which you have to consider as well, using open standards. So a lot of looking at, let's say, for instance, one of the biggest, I think, such a great open standard initiative is the open government. So things that allow people to have transparency, but to have transparency that is ethical, integrity being factored, but also to make sure we are supporting adoption of different practices from other people through these open standards. And also, again, in the same way that we want to be an active player of the existing ecosystem, is reusing and improving our solutions, but also reusing and improving other people's solutions. So allowing yourself to reuse and improve. So I think this is very common in the environmental conservation and environmental improvement industry. So we have recycling, we have upcycling. Recycling and upcycling are perfect examples of how people reuse and improve solutions. So it's something which, again, in digital principles and digital development, it is so important, because if, let's say, as I said earlier, we're working with curriculum which were previously existing, and of course they're not necessarily our content, but we can work with it to reuse it and improve it to fit our digital platforms and to fit our users' needs. So it's not necessarily like we sat down 10 years ago and developed the curriculum. We're actually improving what is existing in the ecosystem. The same thing again, depending with your industry. In our case, we work with students, and students in most cases will be under 18, so they're children. So really considering how best we can protect them, and really we are very strong on child protection policies and child protection regulations, but also just generally, just data in general, especially when it comes to personal data. We've all seen cases with Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook and how data has been violated. Private data and personal security has been violated online. So again, it's something which is so important as you are developing your solution to build in safety and security measures to protect your users, especially if they're children, but also if they're adults. So think of, let's say, if you have a health-based digital platform, and the same way we have patient-doctor confidentiality, you might want to kind of consider the same with your health digital platform. How best are you going to protect that patient-doctor relationship in the context of a digital platform? So it is important from the beginning to also consider privacy and security. And then, of course, the last one, which is so exciting, because I think it really allows such tremendous growth. Our growth has been mostly because we've allowed ourselves to partner with not just, let's say, great founding partners, but also great implementing partners. Collaboration allows you to learn from good practices and adopt them in your own models, but it also allows you to share and to also support others to build their own great solutions. So that is all. And the good thing about these digital principles, which I think what we really have to understand is that it doesn't matter which stage you are, even if you had built your digital platform in the past, you have an app that is already in the market, you have a web that is already in the market, you do not have to worry that you cannot adopt these principles at any stage of your enterprise. You can always adopt them and incorporate them in your practices, in your processes, and also in your activities. So I'm gonna end there. That was a lot, but I'll just take some few questions. Okay, so I have some questions here. You can always ask more questions. I've gathered I have questions in both Q&A and the chat function, so you can just use either. I'll try to look at both from time to time. So why Shula Direct? So Ashura Saidi is asking why Shula Direct. The big thing for us, as I said earlier, is to support students to improve their learning outcomes. So with that being an objective, that can be achieved in several ways, but we also understood the value of technology in helping us reach as many students as possible to be able to achieve our objective, which is helping them improve their learning outcomes. And when I say learning outcomes, I mean when you learn, when you have, let's say, a great textbook, or when you have a great teacher in school, what exactly are you acquiring? What exactly is that knowledge or that information doing to your potential, to your well-being? And we really look at learning outcomes very holistically. So let's say you might learn something about responsible behaviors, maybe not to have a boyfriend at 12 years old or 13 years old, and so that responsible behaviors is actually knowledge or information that is transmitted in school. It may not be academic, but it affects your well-being. So that's also a learning outcome for us, because you acquire knowledge is extracurricular and you're learning. So as much as we focus on curriculum, we also focus on extracurriculum. And the other question is, how do you support youth to engage in digital communities? And what do you offer from SureDirect? So I'll answer both, and then I'll move to the chat. So how we support youth, again, because our solutions are digital, we really, first of all, try to advocate the benefits of getting into the digital spaces. So not just for SureDirect. Generally, I think technology is so powerful, and there's so much that you can get from being in a digital space, from learning, and from just participating in communities. So apart from accessing knowledge, accessing information, the more you engage, you are actually learning what I think. You're actually learning communication skills, you're learning social skills. These are skills which are so important generally in life. You should be able to communicate, should be able to learn how to engage with other people, and also learning how to best apply yourself. So there's so many opportunities in digital spaces, and it's so valuable if you can use the opportunities to learn how best you can apply yourselves in all those contexts. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing, and I'm just gonna check some few more questions. I have some more Q&A, okay. The other question is from Ibrahim Haula. This is such a common question for us. What does SureDirect do in village areas to improve students' reviews? Okay, so it's very interesting, because we, as much as we advocate for access, there are challenges to enable us to reach our access objective. And of course, in village areas, there's so many challenges, not necessarily with just being in a village, but also as a person or as a community or as a family. You find that they could even be great connectivity, there could be great infrastructure, maybe there's a telecom network available, but then you find that in that particular family, they don't have a smartphone, or they have one phone that is only maybe owned by the father or the mother, and they're not at home, or not necessarily, like also not being open enough to give that device to their children. So it's a challenge, because when you look at digital platforms and solutions, there's several layers to it. So, and I can mention some of them. So the first thing that is important, of course, is connectivity. Can people access this solution? Because you could have a great solution, you can have great content, and of course, content is king. You can have a great platform, so the technology that is holding that content, which could be a web platform, an application, or an SMS. But then, so you have content, you have devices. So you have content, you have technology, you have devices, but then you also have connectivity. And then the other thing which we tend not to talk about so often, it's skills and behaviors. So skills is when I give you a laptop and you do not know how to use it, but also, and behavior or attitude, it's when I give you a laptop and you do not want to use it because you don't believe you can actually learn through a laptop. So it's one thing. So it's a number of things. When we look at digital solutions, it's not just one thing. And that is why collaboration, as I said in the digital principles, collaboration is so important. Understanding the value of each stakeholder, of each player, and what we can all do and achieve together. Because what you find is that we have one element that is so strong. We can have great digital platforms. In our case, I believe SureDirect's educational platforms are the best of the best in Tanzania. But then if you do not have the right connectivity, if you do not have affordable devices, if you do not have improved attitudes and mindsets towards how best can students learn through technology, then actually it doesn't really help to have great platforms. So yeah, it's a process, and we are still a work in progress. And I think as a community, we are a work in progress. But if I compare when we started up until now, there has been significant progress, and I'm very optimistic of the future. Okay, I'm just going to look at the other questions. As SureDirect work to improve learning at the same time. Okay, I'm just going to try to read it. As SureDirect work to improve learning at the same time is taking teachers face to face. How do you take it and ensure their support to your platform and to the other innovators of likely what they, okay, right. So yeah, so this is the thing, like we usually think technology is here to replace someone. Technology is not here to replace anyone, especially in our context where we work with schools and education. Technology cannot replace teachers. Technology is great. Technology supports learning. Technology supports teachers. So the way we look at our relationship with teachers is that we are actually complementing teachers' performance. We are here to make teachers be great at what they do. We want them to do their best, and we're here to make sure they are doing their best. So when we provide teaching resources on our teachers' dashboard, our Teachers Resource Center on SureDirect platforms, we are directly trying to support that teacher to be good at what that teacher can do. So when we give them quizzes, when we give them notes, when we give them the syllabus, we want them to use those resources to support their students. What we learned, as I said earlier, our first user were students, but over time we also added teachers as also a category of users, because you can clearly see the ripple effect. If you support one teacher, that teacher perhaps can teach 300 students in their school. Maybe that teacher teaches from 2, from 1, and from 3. And so by supporting just one teacher, you have this ripple effect where they can teach a lot more students than us trying to teach those particular students in that school. So teachers have been our great champions. And of course, I hope you guys saw Teacher Kidevu on my presentation. There was the Teacher Kidevu at the corner, and yeah, so Teacher Kidevu is our genius teacher, and he's really he represents the entire value and ethos of why we support teachers, because we want to support great teachers to enable them to do their job and support their students to achieve their learning outcomes. Great, and so I'm just going to check some few more questions. Right, so the other questions around positive and negative impacts of digital solutions. So there's so many, and as I said earlier, based on objectives, the first one, of course, is improved access. When you look at a digital solution, you look at a platform which can reach 1 million students at a go, and in some cases, that content or those resources wouldn't have been able to do so. But at the same time, a digital platform or a digital solution builds that students' engagement through the user experience. When they are attempting questions, when they are trying to do a mock exam, when they're participating in a discussion, they are actually engaging. And through that engagement, you start seeing results in their interest in learning. I mean, if you give a student a textbook, and if you give a student, let's say, a tablet with the same content that is in the textbook, you naturally see that student being more interested in using the tablet, even though it will be the same content, than perhaps learning from a textbook. So that improved students' interest is something which is so interesting with digital platforms. But also, you also find there's a lot of improved behaviors in terms of how they can actually learn on their own. So if you have a student who is learning in the classroom, naturally the classroom, it's almost like a blanket solution unless the teacher is very good. But you find that on a digital platform, it's very personalized. A student can learn at their own pace, they can learn at their own time, they can attempt questions as many as they can. There's no inhibitions of how they learn, because again, it's very personalized, it's very individualized. And so you find it's a very different experience, which really drives learning. And learning, again, it's beyond knowledge and information. Learning is also the behaviors that are adopted with the students. So behaviors, let's say, when they learn how to research on the digital platform. So when they learn how to navigate from quizzes to learning notes, to syllabus, to participate in the discussion, they're learning something more. They're acquiring digital skills, they are acquiring communication skills. When they have to respond to their peers in the discussion forum, when they have to engage a teacher, they are also adopting communication skills. But that whole navigation also helps them to adopt research and just that curiosity, which is a lifelong skill. It's a 21st century skill, which is needed for just success in life. So there's a number of factors, but again, of course, the content, the educational content that is curriculum-based also helps them to do well in their school performance, whether it's test scores or exams, and ultimately in their national exams. Great. So I'm just going to look at the questions again, and yes, so somebody asked, Angela Mwanyika has asked whether Shula Direct works in partnership with orphanage centers. The answer is yes. If that orphanage center has devices, for instance, we are more than happy to come in and pre-install our platform. So Shula Direct has a web platform, which is available at www.shuladirect.co.tz. We also have an app, which is available on all app stores. But we also have an SMS platform, which you can access by texting Makini to 15070. And we also have a learning management system, which is directly for schools, or let's say for devices at home. But the learning management system is what you would see on our online platform, but then it's in an offline version. But it also allows our users to engage remotely in their school, or in this case, an orphanage center, and to create content and not just consume our content. And if you're interested, please get in touch with us, and we'll be more than happy to support your orphanage center with the learning management system. So I'm just going to look at some more. I'm not so sure if I'm seeing all the questions. Okay. Right. There are some more questions, but I don't know why I cannot see them. Okay. Okay, so somebody asked, students in all levels are not allowed to use mobile phones. How can they become aware with digital solutions in Tanzania? This is from Nicholas Minoja from Sokoine University of Agriculture. Yes, Nicholas, it is true. And what we hope is that students, when they're at home, they'll be able to use mobile phones, they'll be able to use technology devices. I think it's so important that technology becomes part and parcel of their behaviors and just their daily lives, because technology is here to stay. And the earlier they learn to adopt it and to use it responsibly, the earlier they can actually use technology for so many other things. So I feel like the late we are into adopting technology into our lives, the more we're kind of being left behind with how the whole world is changing. I think we've all seen how technology was strongly adopted during COVID and how it has influenced how people work, how people engage with each other. So I think it's so important to really consider technology not as, it's not bad, not to not consider technology as something which is here to distract our young people, but to make them understand how they can use technology responsibly. And then the other thing is how young with disability can adopt the use of digital solutions. So yeah, this is a great question. It's so important to also consider people with disabilities. At Shula Direct, we have a specific interest with inclusivity and making sure that we don't leave anyone behind, especially students with learning disabilities. So now we've been very keen on looking at different technologies that we can support. We try to pilot a lot of sign language support content, but then now we also try to understand different learning needs. So apart from just what we see as physical disabilities, there are also learning disabilities, and technology is so helpful in supporting learning disabilities among our children. So, and we're looking at it from different ways. So as I said earlier, we support teachers to support their students, but we also want to support parents to support their children at home, especially children with learning disabilities. So yeah, there is an opportunity to really build up a lot more content that is supporting all sorts of learning needs, whether it's physical disabilities or whether it's learning disabilities. Okay, I'm just going to check out some few more questions, but otherwise, okay, the holidays duration is only 3 months per year. One of the government allow use of internet at school. Yeah, so again, I think it's a matter of understanding the ecosystem, understanding the role of every player, and looking at how best we can support each other. I think there's different ways that we can work together by understanding the strengths and opportunities among all the members of the ecosystem. And again, also looking at priorities, because I think there's also an issue of prioritization, especially in education in Tanzania. And I think in all social development sectors, it's so important to, as we have minimal resources, to look at how best we can prioritize based on needs. So the other question is, how do you handle the risk of letting young adults use tabs and all those? How do you ensure that they don't engage with content from the web? So again, here's what I think is so important. It's so important to teach our children and our students to have good values and to have responsible behaviors and to really adopt life skills, because I really believe in making sure they're actually strong, responsible young citizens who then will be able, through our guidance and support, will be able to navigate all the temptations and to navigate all the challenges in just being, again, teenagers with raging hormones. But at the same time, in the same way you wouldn't leave a television with your children without any controls or without any support, it's the same way you cannot leave a mobile phone or a laptop or any sort of device without your supervision, without your support, because again, these are young people, they need the support to be able to make the right decisions, but also being supported to navigate their challenges. Yeah, so I really think it's important to consider our role as parents, our role as a community, and the role of teachers, and not just let our children sort of grow on their own, to really be there to support their growth and development. Great. So I think I'm done with all the questions. This was really nice talking to you all. I hope you got some 2 or 3 things from the digital principles. I wish you all the best as you're developing your digital platforms. It's really important to try and incorporate the digital principles because it will go a long way in assisting you to build great, contextual, sustainable, and relevant solutions. Yeah, and if there's anyone with the last question, you can raise your hand to speak, and you can actually, I think they can let your video and say something on the call. That's the message from the host, guys. Oh, thank you, Hatibu. I look forward to seeing your solutions with adopted digital principles. So you can raise a hand and the hosts will enable your video and I think your audio. So I have 2 more minutes and then I will be saying goodbye to you all. And again, thank you so much. Thank you, Dot, for organizing this. I think we'll be able to share the video and the presentation, like the audio and the video with all of you. And if there's any question, I'm just going to put in our email and you can always ask us a question. Okay. Great, I've already shared with you our email address. So please, in case of any inquiry, feel free to reach out and we look forward, again, in the spirit of collaboration, we look forward to partner with you all. I wish you a great day and great sessions of the rest of the summit.